Hello, I'm Esther Githui-Ewart. It's Thursday, July 7th. This is Africa 54.
Hundreds of escaped inmates remain on the loose in Nigeria after a prison break. The Islamic State group is claiming responsibility for the attack on Kuje prison in Abuja. Kenya's hotly contested presidential election is set for August 9. We'll have a preview of the frontrunners. And breaking barriers, a woman is looking to be the first wrestler from Sudan to make it to the Olympics. All this and much more on today's Africa 54.
Rwanda and Congo have agreed to dial back tensions after discussions between their presidents in Angola. Paul Ndiho has the details.
Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo agreed to reduce tensions following a day of talks between their presidents, mediated by Angola. A meeting was held in Luanda between Rwandan President Paul Kagame and Congolese President Felix Tshisekedi and Angolan President João Lourenço. According to unconfirmed reports, the Congolese rebel group M23 says that the talks between Rwandan President Paul Kagame and the Democratic Republic of Congo's President Felix Tshisekedi will not stop the fighting, and M23 is not expected to withdraw from its positions in eastern Congo. VOA has not been able to independently verify this report, but M23 spokesperson Major Willie Ngoma was quoted as saying, quote, "Withdrawing to go where? We are Congolese. Do you want us to live without a country?" However, Angolan President João Lourenço went further, announcing a ceasefire, although he did not give any details.
Tivemos progressos positivos, a nosso ver.
We had a positive progress from our point of view. We agreed on a ceasefire. Among other measures are contained in the roadmap that has just been presented. We decided on creating a mechanism of observation, in addition to one already existing at the level of International Conference of Great Lakes Region. The DRC has repeatedly accused Rwanda of backing the M23, a charge Rwanda has forcefully denied. Congolese President Felix Tshisekedi says he hopes talks at a mini-summit in Angola will lead to an immediate ceasefire and a roadmap towards normalizing diplomatic ties, including through ending hostilities involving the M23 militia in eastern DRC.
Donc j'espère vraiment et j'attends de ce processus.
I hope this process will bring an immediate ceasefire and the withdrawal of the group M23. And hoping that the implementation of the roadmap that could lead us to a process of peace, stability, and mutual trust. Rwanda and Congo have traded angry statements stemming from allegations that Rwanda backs the M23, but Rwanda has denied its backing the rebels.
We are looking forward to creating normalization between our two countries by also resolving the issues that are on the ground that have led us to this point.
The African Union earlier this year asked Angola to mediate between Congo and Rwanda under the auspices of a regional body known as the International Conference on the Great Lakes Region. About 170,000 people have been displaced since M23 resurfaced in eastern DRC. Paul Ndiho, VOA News, Washington.
The Islamic State West African province in Nigeria is claiming responsibility for breaking into a correctional facility in Abuja and freeing hundreds of inmates, including high-profile terrorists. Timothy Obiezu reports from Abuja.
One by one, top officials arrived at a medium security prison in Nigeria's capital. Authorities say 879 inmates here fled after heavily armed men attacked the facility with guns and explosives on Tuesday night. So far, 436 have been recaptured, but hundreds more remain at large. 4 people were killed, including 3 inmates and a prison official. On Thursday, authorities continued the search for missing inmates in nearby bushes and local villages. Some of the search teams were successful. They returned in batches with some escapees.
We'll get them. No cause for alarm, we'll get them. Okay. Nigerians should not worry at all.
This 38 seconds long footage, verified by security experts, show the Islamic State West Africa province fighters as they claim responsibility for the attack. The video clearly shows the group did not mean any harm for the prisoners.
64 high-profile terrorism suspects are among those on the loose. Security experts believe the attack followed calls made by ISIS to its local affiliates to break out prisoners or negotiate their release.
Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari condemned the attack after his visit to the facility on Wednesday. He said he was disappointed with the intelligence system and wants a comprehensive report on the incident. But his statement immediately triggered a backlash. The critics reminded him of a promise he made to secure the country 7 years ago when he first won office.
If they don't know what to do, then they should resign. But to me, it is embarrassing to the country, it's embarrassing to families, because I remember my families were thrown into panic.
For me, it's a leadership failure. It's a leadership failure totally to the security agents, to the leadership of the country. When you have high-profile individuals, criminals in the cell, your duty is to put also high-profile security.
Last month, authorities blamed ISWAP for the gruesome murder of 40 worshippers in a Catholic church in southwest Nigeria. Also on Tuesday, armed men ambushed the president's convoy carrying an advance team to the president's hometown in northwest Katsina State, but were repelled by the military and police. The president was not in any of the vehicles. But these attacks raise concerns that terror groups are expanding operations beyond popular bases in northeastern states of Borno, Yobe, and Adamawa. Timothy Obiezu for VOA News, Abuja, Nigeria.
The World Health Organization says more than 6,000 cases of monkeypox are being reported from 58 countries in the current outbreak. WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus told a virtual news conference from Geneva that the UN agency will reconvene a meeting of the committee that will advise on declaring the outbreak a global health emergency, the WHO's highest level of alert in the week beginning July 18th or sooner. At its previous meeting on June 27th, the committee decided that the outbreak was not yet a health emergency, but Tedros says he continues to be concerned.
On monkeypox, I continue to be concerned by the scale and spread of the virus. Across the world, there has now been more than 6,000 cases recorded in 58 countries. Testing remains a challenge, and it's highly probable that there are a significant number of cases not being picked up. Europe is the current epicenter of the outbreak, recording more than 80% of cases globally.
Tedros is also raising concerns about the rise of worldwide COVID-19 cases, saying that reported cases have increased nearly 30% over the past 2 weeks. Kenyans head to the polls on August 9th to elect a new president and lawmakers. Kenyan citizens are currently grappling with rising cost of food, domestic violence, and a fear of possible ethnic clashes like those following the 2007 elections. There are 4 presidential contenders, but former Prime Minister Raila Odinga and current Deputy President William Ruto are the front-runners. Odinga has picked a woman, Martha Karua, a former Justice Minister, as his running mate, while Deputy President Ruto has chosen Rigathi Gachagua, a seasoned politician and a grassroots organizer, as his running mate. As President Uhuru Kenyatta steps down, he is no longer friendly with Deputy President Ruto, and they are not working together. For more insight on Kenya's August 9th election, James Gundi, an adjunct professor of African Studies at Georgetown University, joins me live via Skype from Columbia, Maryland. Professor Gundi, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you, Esther.
Now, you've watched the presidential campaigns. They are hot right now, and you've also read the manifestos of the 4 presidential candidates. But let's look at the 2 front-runners, former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, and let's start with him. What would a Raila Odinga presidency mean for Kenyans?
Thank you again. Very briefly, let me say that I am not sure what Raila presidency brings or does not bring, because there is the element of perception and there is the element of reality. But that being said, I have to give credit to Raila and the history that he brings to the table. He's a man who has been in the ditches fighting for liberation. He fought hard to get a new constitution. And so he has a reputation of working hard to bring rights to ordinary Kenyans. He would also be the first detainee, really, a political detainee, to ascend to the highest office on the land. So I think he does have some strong credentials. Now, whether he has the opportunity or whether he's the right person at this time in the history of Kenya remains to be seen.
So let's turn to Deputy President William Ruto, who has touted his bottom-up economic approach to lift the welfare of millions of Kenyans who are poor. What would a William Ruto presidency mean for the Kenyans?
I would say for most Kenyans who are looking for change, a Ruto presidency really signifies or symbolizes a break with the past. Kenya, as in many other African countries, has been ruled by a very small number of individual families. And Kenya is no different. So I think for many Kenyans, just having a Ruto presidency, that would mean a break from the Kenyatta, the Moi, the Odinga families that have dominated the political scene, and particularly the highest offices on the land. So I think he does bring that break from the change. He does seem to represent a good number of the lower classes in society. Whether he actually espouses those qualities that he claims to represent remains a big question, given that these 2 individuals, both Raila and Ruto, are known quantities. They are not strangers to Kenyans. And whether they represent what they say is a big question Kenyans will have to answer.
So, Professor, what are the core issues that Kenyans are concerned about right now, regardless of who wins the presidential election on August 9th?
I think first and foremost is peace in the land. Without peace, I mean, that's the biggest ingredient that Kenyans will need to go forward. But outside that, there is also the question of the high cost of living. Kenya is suffering from the same issues that the rest of the world, and particularly poor countries as in African countries, are suffering. So I think high cost of living remains a big challenge. There's no question part of that is due to high level of corruption. And therefore, Kenyans will be looking to see the next president, the next government, to really confront the this monster that is called corruption, and that has bedeviled the country for decades with promises that have gone unfulfilled in terms of fighting corruption. So I think those are the three major issues that Kenyans will be looking to see solved by the next government.
And very briefly, Professor, your thoughts on the media coverage of the two presidential candidates. There have been concerns about even the mainstream media taking sides. What should be happening right now? Because social media is also a force to reckon with, whether they are saying the truth or not the truth.
And I think social media is going to be a big player in this election. Love it or hate it, it's just the reality of where we are today. As far as the mainstream media is concerned and the coverage, I think that has become the song lately that every candidate will cry for when it comes to the kind of coverage they receive from media.
Right.
So that's not unusual. But I think at the end of the day, social media, more than the mainstream media, may have a huge impact on the results and what goes on after the election in Kenya.
Mr. Gundi, thank you so much for your insight. James Gundi teaches African Studies at Georgetown University and is a native of Kenya. Now to Britain, where scandal ridden Boris Johnson announced Thursday that he is stepping down as British Prime Minister after he was abandoned by ministers and most of the Conservative lawmakers. Bowing to the inevitable as more than 50 ministers quit and lawmakers said he must go, an isolated and powerless Johnson spoke outside the Downing Street to confirm that he would resign. He said, quote, "The process of choosing that new leader should begin now. And today I have appointed a cabinet to serve as I will until a new leader is in place. The Conservatives will now have to elect a new leader, a process which would take weeks or months." Amid strikes that South Africa's Eskom is blaming for the worst power cuts in 2 years, the National Union of Mine Workers and the National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa trade unions have, according to media reports, agreed a pay deal with the struggling power company. David Doyle has the details.
South Africa's Eskom signed a wage deal with trade unions on Tuesday, potentially paving the way for a resolution to the country's worst power cuts in 2 years. The struggling state-owned utility began implementing so-called Stage 6 outages last week, leaving many without power for at least 6 hours a day. It had blamed the power cuts, known locally as load shedding, on striking workers, hampering efforts to bring malfunctioning power units back online. The agreement struck with its 3 recognised unions is for a 7% salary increase. Officials at the 2 biggest unions, NUM and NUMSA, had earlier said they'd reached an agreement in principle. An official for the Solidarity Union said the deal with Eskom was being signed. South Africa has faced intermittent power cuts for more than a decade, hindering economic growth. Eskom has previously warned that even if an agreement were reached to end the strike, it faces a backlog of maintenance work that could take weeks to clear. The system, it said, remains vulnerable to additional breakdowns.
David Doyle of Reuters filed that report. We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54 and all our VOA Africa programs on our website at voaafrica.com. Still to come, a Sudanese wrestler looks to break major barriers. Stay with us.
China, in the past decade, has been criticized by Western media for its economic and political involvement in Africa, led by the Belt and Road Initiative. But what's rarely seen in the media is the complex and evolving cultural integration and friction between the two most ancient cultures in the world. On the next edition of Our Voices, we'll discuss the love-hate relationship that's simmering in the community and what we can expect from the next generation. Join the conversation each week right here on Our Voices.
Health, wellness, sport, beauty, medical breakthroughs. Healthy Living cares about your well-being. What are the main health concerns in Africa and around the world? Find out the latest on coronavirus. Connect with our experts and ask them questions.
How long does the virus stay?
Join me, Linor Moudou, in Washington, every week on Healthy Living, right here on VOA.
In other African news, the Africa CDC says it has signed a memorandum of understanding with drug manufacturer Pfizer for African countries to receive supplies of the Paxlovid pill to treat COVID-19. Lawmakers from Cameroon's troubled English-speaking regions are calling for more troops to protect officials, government workers, and their families from separatists. Families of hostages taken by gunmen who attacked a passenger train near Nigeria's capital in March say at least 5 children are among the 50 people still held. And Tunisia's Ansar Bira won her Wimbledon semi-final match on Thursday, becoming the first African woman in the Open era to reach a Grand Slam singles final. The accused gunman in Monday's deadly mass shooting in the Chicago suburb of Highland Park has made his first court appearance. Meanwhile, traumatized residents search for answers and demand change. VOA Midwest correspondent Ken Faribault visited Highland Park and has this report.
It started out as a typical July 4th morning for Jill Doherty, watching the Highland Park Parade, an annual U.S. Independence Day event she's attended with family and friends for decades.
All of a sudden we heard a pop and we thought it's too early in the day for fireworks. And then we realized it was shooting.
Doherty and her group fled, leaving chairs and belongings behind.
We just ran.
A day after the shooting rampage that claimed 7 lives and left dozens wounded, several cordon blocks of the town center appeared frozen in time as Doherty returned to collect her things. The incident left her with great sadness and questions.
What could motivate somebody to do this?
You don't expect it to happen where you're from. Where you grow up is where you feel safest.
It was by chance that 19-year-old Jacob Carman missed joining the crowd at Highland Park this year.
Forgot to set my alarm. I would have been here. The spot where it took place was my family's usual viewing spot, so...
He had difficulty expressing his emotions in the wake of a tragedy that has transformed his hometown.
I could say 1,000 words in my true feeling of absolute sorrow and devastation after this happening yesterday. I cannot find the right words in all those 1,000 words.
What Carmen wants most isn't words, but action.
How can people in power change this? How can people help? That's what I want to know. How can people change this so that doesn't happen again?
It's a message echoed by many in this affluent Chicago suburb of about 30,000 as U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris visited grief-stricken residents law enforcement, and city leaders.
This should never have happened. We talk about it being senseless. It is senseless.
We have this onslaught of mass shootings. They don't seem to stop, and it's so frustrating because we know how to stop them.
Lorianne Post is a professor and mass shooting expert at the Feinberg School of Medicine at Northwestern University. While Congress approved new gun control legislation after mass shootings in Texas and New York earlier this year, Post believes it doesn't go far enough.
The U.S. had a federal assault weapons ban that was in place from 1994 until 2004, and during that ban, mass shootings attenuated significantly. And had we kept that ban in place, we would have prevented probably 30 mass shootings.
While there is no current federal assault weapons ban, the town of Highland Park does have strict local restrictions on the semi-automatic weapons used in the July 4th shooting. Ordinances that did not prevent the tragedy.
We got to be smarter as a country in terms of who has access to what, and in particular assault weapons.
I don't know what the right call to action is, but I'm going to be optimistic we can find it.
With the alleged gunman facing murder charges, Doherty hopes the tragedy sparks meaningful change in America.
It might be a most unfortunate catalyst for good change.
Kane Fairbaugh, VOA News, Highland Park, Illinois.
Patricia Seyfeddin Al-Haj is hoping to be Sudan's first wrestler to make it to the Olympics, despite some suggesting it's a sport for men. Clara Frank has more.
Patricia Seyfeddin Al-Haj grew up watching her grandfather wrestle in Sudan's Nuba Mountains. Years later, she's got a shot at becoming the country's first wrestler at an Olympic Games. Having won a bronze medal in an African championship earlier this year, she's now training ahead of Paris 2024.
Some people tell me that wrestling is difficult. And why did you choose this field? It entails violence. I tell them wrestling is not difficult. You may see it as difficult, but it's not beating each other. It has rules and practices. Even my friends ask me why I chose wrestling. I tell them because I inherited the practice from my grandfather. They tell me it's difficult, but I say it's not difficult at all. It's easy.
Wrestling is an important element of cultural identity for communities in the Nuba Mountains, where young people show off their strength during the harvest season. It's been woven into the fabric of society for centuries. But today, Sudan is grappling with a political deadlock and an economic crisis as a result of a military coup last year. Al-Haj's coach, Mustafa Hamad Ali, says ambitious athletes like her are offered little support. He added that many say wrestling is just for men, but that it is an Olympic sport for everyone. The president of the Sudanese Wrestling Foundation, Ala Gabu Suleiman Kabo, said Al-Haj had been given a grant from the Global Development Initiative Olympic Solidarity. That would facilitate, he said, 2 years of training in Nigeria with champion wrestlers. Al-Haj encourages all Sudanese women to take up wrestling because, she says, at the moment, she's on her own. Clara Frank, VOA News, Washington.
And that's our show for today. We invite you to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.